It's day 3 of the Oscar Pistorius trial, and welcome once again to our enca.com Google Hangout. Today, we're very fortunate to have two of our reporters join in the Google Hangout. First being Dianne Hawker, who's been seated inside the court, and Lenyaro Sello, who's been outside braving the elements to bring us the news. Let's start with you, Len. There have been reports that media attention surrounding the Oscar trial has been dwindling. What have you noticed?
Well, Sashni, not at all. Over the past few days, the same number of journalists, the same number of cameras and photographers have been here and were here today as well. You have to remember, you have a lot of cameras outside the court, and then as you walk into the court, along the corridors of the court, there are other cameras, there are other journalists, there are people doing live crossings here. So I do not think that the media attention is dwindling, especially because more witnesses are being called on the stand. More witnesses are now being cross-examined. So I don't think the media attention is dwindling.
Len, it doesn't seem like the weather has deterred members of the public either. And this morning when Oscar was coming into court, there were a group of supporters outside. What were they saying, Len? Were they saying anything directly to him? Were they cheering? Tell us about that.
Well, most people were very happy to see Oscar Pistorius today. What has been happening over the past 2 days is that it has been such chaos. His arrival, him leaving the court has been such chaos. You have photographers, you have cameras literally just going on him. So this shielding the rest of the public, they could not see his face. And for the first time today, police officers, journalists, we all worked together. We all created a passage for him to walk through, which also gave an opportunity to members of the public to see him. They were taking pictures, they were taking videos, they were calling out his name. And most of them that I spoke to after that were very happy to have seen Oscar Pistorius. Some of them said they've been coming here every day in the morning just to see his face, and today they finally did.
And what's been his response? Is he just been head down and walking forward towards?
Oh no, definitely head down. That's what he does. Head down. He walks through the photographers, through the cameras. He gets into court. Another group of journalists, and then he walks into court. Head down.
Okay, Len, today the Gauteng Premier, Nomvula Mokonyane, made an appearance at court, and I understand that she also addressed members of the media. Tell us what she said.
Well, Sashni, as she arrived here dressed in black with a sticker of River's face on her jacket, she says that is in solidarity with the Steenkamp family. She says she's also praised South Africans, the witnesses that she says are ordinary South Africans who've come forward to come give their side of the story of what happened on the night River was killed. She says it shows that the South African public, the South African citizens are willing to work with the justice system. But she also described to the media outside how she felt during testimony. She says she had a lump in her throat. She said she had a tear in her eye. And she also spoke about June, River's mom, saying, this is such a painful experience. Every day she has to listen, whether watching on TV, whether in court, but she has to listen to the events leading up to her daughter's death.
Do you know if she's met with the Steenkamps at all?
Well, she didn't make that clear, but she just spoke of how River's mom, June, felt. So from that, we can just only take that she has met with her, she has spoken to her, because she was very insistent, saying that she's here in her capacity as a mother, in her capacity as someone who's also lost a child, and she understands her pain.
Okay. Dianne, can you tell me a bit more about Kevin Lerena, the former boxer, or the boxer, sorry, his testimony in court and the day that the gun went off at the popular restaurant Tasha's. And this was basically weeks before Riva's death. Tell us about that.
Yes, Sash. It happened in January 2011. The owner of Tasha's actually specified that it was on the 11th of January, which is almost a month before Riva's death. Basically, what Mr. Lerena told the court was that he had met Oscar at the Kyalami racetrack through one of his sponsors, and that Oscar had agreed to give him some training tips and dieting tips which he could use for his boxing career, and they developed a sort of friendship from there onwards. They then went to the Tasha's restaurant with two other gentlemen, Mr. Martin Rooney and a gentleman by the surname of Fresco. His first name escapes me now. And it was Fresco who is the one who passed the gun under the table in the Tasha's restaurant. According to Mr. Larina, as the gun was being passed under the table, it went off and it shot the tiles under the table. He was injured very mildly. He thinks that it was a piece of shrapnel from one of the tiles that actually hit him, and he says that he was very shocked by what had happened. Apparently, according to Mr. Larina, Fresco, when giving the gun to Pistorius, had said that the gun was one up, meaning that there's one bullet in the chamber. In the cross-examination, the defense lawyer Barry Rue asked whether it was possible that Oscar Pistorius didn't hear what Fresco said about there being a bullet in the chamber with the gun being one up, because the restaurant was very full, and he said that it was possible, but he personally didn't know that. He couldn't say that for a fact. So, the state now bringing in other evidence which relates to the gun charges that Oscar Pistorius is facing. He's facing three different gun charges, charges relating to allegations of him contravening the Firearms Control Act in more than one incident. So we'll obviously see more evidence of what the other incidents are, but in terms of the Tasha's incident, we also saw testimony from the owner of the restaurant and from his wife, both of whom say they went to speak to the table after the gunshot went off, and that the apology came from the table in general, but that Mr. Fresco was the one who took responsibility, saying that the gun went off when it fell out of his tracksuit pants. They then paid the bill and soon afterwards left the restaurant. So that was some of the testimony that we heard today. From what it seems, from what we've heard now, we will be hearing different testimony tomorrow morning relating to going back to the shooting at Oscar's home, and that will be going back to the state's third witness, Mr. Johnson.
What do you make of the defense, Barry Rue, basically saying that they weren't prepared for Larina and to cross-examine him?
Well,
I mean, about it saying he's not, he wouldn't be comfortable cross-examining a boxer.
I think that they have to obviously treat every witness with the same level of preparation, and from what I can understand, they were expecting or anticipating to carry on with the cross-examination of Charles Johnson, who is Michelle Berger's husband. The reason that testimony was put on hold was because Barry Rue wanted to have some more evidence submitted in court relating to Johnson's notes that he made about what happened on that evening when Reeva Steenkamp was murdered. So that wasn't something that he was aware of prior to coming to court today, that there were these notes. It came out in evidence, and then he indicated to the court that he actually wanted to see them. The point that Barry Rue has been driving home has been that there's a great similarity between the evidence of Michelle Berger and that of her husband. And he's even pointed to exact words like the word fading, which they both used here in court to describe what they believe to be Reeva Steenkamp's last screams. So with that evidence, I think, and particularly with the notes, we can anticipate that he will be looking at both notes, notes made by both of those in the couple, made by the couple, to see if there are any similarities in how they noted what had happened on that night.
The court also heard that Oscar apologized profusely to the people sitting around his table after the shot went off. What transpired in court? What did you hear?
Well, what we heard was that even though he didn't take responsibility for the shooting himself, in the sense of saying that he had the gun in his hand and he's the one that fired the gun, he did apologize to the manager, the owner of Tasha's, and his wife. They both were here, Mr. and Mrs. Lupus, and they both admitted that Oscar really did apologize and paid the bill before he left. However, he didn't say that he's the one that fired the weapon. His friend, Mr. Fresco, is the one that said that the gun had fallen out of his tracksuit pants. In the earlier evidence from Narina, he said that Oscar had been quite shocked by what had happened, and that he was worried about sort of any kind of media attention coming his way as a result of that incident. So that seemingly was the reason why Fresco took responsibility for firing the weapon instead of Oscar Pistorius saying that he had done it and then leaving the restaurant.
So we basically heard today that Oscar asked his friend to take the blame for the incident because he didn't want the media attention or the spotlight on him.
Yes, that was the evidence that was given by Larina in court. He even mentioned the aspect of the media attention that could come from an incident like that, and he said that Oscar had actually asked that Fresco take the blame for what had happened, and he used the words "take the blame." Although he said that he didn't remember the exact words that were used in that conversation.
What can we expect from tomorrow?
Tomorrow we're expecting Charles Johnson to be back on the stand. When he left today, Judge Masipa did warn him that he is still under oath and that he's not allowed to speak to anyone, in particular his wife, about the case. So he's expected to now this evening go back home and return with a computer on which his notes of what had happened that evening were typed up, and bring copies of those notes to court, and from what I understand also possibly bring the machine itself to indicate when the notes were actually taken, when they were actually written down. The judge also asked him to make sure that he brings his wife's notes with him. So we can anticipate that there will be more testimony from Charles Johnson, and that he will be cross-examined on what is in those notes, when they were written, and whether there are any similarities between his notes and those of his wife.